Good morning. Recently, I was sent a quote that somehow seems relevant to our discussion today. Faith is not about everything turning out okay. Faith is about being okay no matter how things turn out. We often hear a lot of dialogue about controlling our future. A.T. Still did not control the future of osteopathic medicine. However, he had enormous impact on shaping the future of all medical practice. I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to attend the 2018 A.T. Still Lecture. I would also like to thank AOA President Mark Baker and the AOA Board of Trustees for bestowing the honor of this address. I'd like to welcome everyone else that are guests here today. Rather than thinking of this as a lecture, I'd like to think of this as more of a strategic conversation. This is a conversation about the soul of our profession, about our journey from past to present, and about how collectively we can help shape and direct our future, whatever that future is to be. Our conversation today will cover several topics. First, recognizing that we are all on a mythic journey, starting with the mythic hero A.T. Still. We'll discuss why A.T. Still qualifies as a true mythic hero. We will address why, despite starting his journey alone, he did not travel alone for long. He was joined by many osteopathic colleagues and supporters, living and deceased, and why others will continue to join us as we continue on this journey into the future, and why that journey will be one of constant change. Second, we'll discuss the source of our resilience. Why have we continued to grow and evolve? Why our resilience is the product of our collective understanding of the why of our profession, and how our why will continue to impact colleagues, patients, and future DOs. Third, that our mission, individually as leaders and collectively as the deliberative body of the AOA, is to sustain the belief in the why of what we do to embrace change and to help shape our own future. The comedian Stephen Wright tells us change is inevitable, except from a vending machine. We've had vigorous debates over a number of years about the risks of change, about the risks of unrestrained growth in our profession, about the risks of the single accreditation system, about the loss of residency slots, about parity and recognition of our certification and our DO program directors. With respect to our growth, many of us, including yours truly, have expressed concerns that we are creating a supply chain that cannot be fulfilled, that students graduating from our expanded DO schools will not get adequate exposure to DO mentors, that there will not be enough GME to support postgraduate residencies for all of them, that we may be diluting the purity of our tribe with certification of MDs, or with proliferating hordes of students from new schools in these new areas that are lukewarm about osteopathic principles and profession and practice. Embedded within these discussions have been many, many concerns about unintended consequences. How many times do we talk about unintended consequences? But today, let's look at these consequences from another perspective. What if these unintended consequences were positive and not negative? What if we've been making the right moves to expand our pipeline of emerging DOs and MDs in our profession? What if they are physicians who truly understand why they want to be practitioners of osteopathic medicine? What if that growing pipeline is our gateway to the future and is a good thing? Either way we choose to look at these things, we live in an uncertain world. The only constant is change. We also live in a VUCA world. Well, that's a weird phrase, isn't it? Does anybody know what VUCA means? VUCA means, it's an acronym for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. I think most of you would agree that those factors are all components of our current strategic environments and likely will continue to be in our future. VUCA affects our goal setting, our planning processes, our debates on policy development, and how we respond to the challenges around us. Living with VUCA is about being influential, but accepting that we cannot control all future events. Learning to live with VUCA is about being okay with whatever the future will be. The truth is, VUCA has always been a part of the strategic environment. This is nothing new. A.T. Still was affected by VUCA. When he tried to put forth the original concepts of osteopathic medicine, he received less than a friendly response. To say there was volatility among his detractors is an understatement. There was uncertainty about his path to the future. The logistics of starting a whole new school of medicine was beyond complex, and trying to prove his theories of health and disease was viewed by skeptics as fraught with ambiguity. Despite the VUCA factors, he never lost sight of who he was and where he was going on his journey. 5 years ago, as we debated our entry into the single accreditation system, I asked you a key question: are we who we say we are? A.T. Still, as the archetypal disruptive innovator, our mythic hero, would look ahead to the future he envisioned, and he would affirm unequivocally that we are who we say we are. He was an agent of change who would tell us that who and what we are as a profession is destined to evolve. However, he would also remind us that the why of what we do, the vision and the goals, has not changed in over 140 years. Our founder both talked the talk and walked the walk in a VUCA world, but he was guided by an unwavering vision and a belief in why his concepts were good for patients. He felt that medicine at the time was trapped in old ideas and incomplete thinking. He was an agent of change. He was a disruptive innovator. He was willing to buck the status quo no matter what the cost. So why would he bother to do this? He was a man who was shaped by his experiences, and we know many of these experiences. We all know the stories of the tragic loss of members of his family due to incomplete medical knowledge and resources. We know that leeches and bleeding were in common use. We know of his firsthand experiences in the Civil War with the butchery, where the best thing that could be offered was an amputation or heavy doses of morphine to ease the rigors of impending death. At the time, these things were considered to be the standard of care. A.T. Still knew that things could change for the better. While limited knowledge and prejudice at the time constrained his ability to inoculate the House of Medicine with his ideas, his core principles were resilient. This resilience highlights the brilliance of his theories and explains why so many of them still resonate with us today, both within and outside of the osteopathic profession. And it explains why they will continue to resonate in a changing future. The resonance of osteopathic thinking also explains why within these single accreditation systems, MD programs are seeking osteopathic recognition. They explain why Tom Naska, who spoke with you today, would tell former President Bob Uhas and myself that, quote, "we need you to inoculate us with your culture and with your approach to care." You heard Boyd Boozer talk about this yesterday, and the inoculation does continue. A.T. Still had a vision that there was a better way to think about health and disease. Like many other brilliant leaders, he saw the elephant in the middle of the room. He recognized that structure does relate to function, that the rule of the artery is indeed supreme. He emphasized that our job as a physician is not to be a healer, but to be a mediator of health, to create an environment for patients to achieve their own homeostasis. This was Dr. Still's why. And today, that is why osteopathic thinking resonates with all DO specialists and not just with those DOs who perform OMT. That will serve us into the future as remaining a complete profession. Dr. Still's vision and his why launched him on a mythic hero's journey. I keep using this term, mythic hero. How many of you know the concept of the mythic hero's journey? Any hands out there? A few people? It's a cultural pathway studied by Professor Joseph Campbell. Campbell recognized that the journey of the mythic hero was a recurring pattern, a pattern that transcends all geographic and cultural boundaries and that repeats itself in disparate cultures throughout recorded history and likely before there was any written language. Every culture throughout history has stories of a mythic hero and the hero's journey. Here's the pattern. We'll discuss why it's relevant to us and why it may seem familiar to you. The hero receives a call to adventure, a mission he is willing to enter on that is so important he'll take a risky journey into a VUCA world, a journey marked by a series of trials that cannot be overcome by experience alone, but that are tests of determination, innovation, and character. Along the way, the hero discovers that someone who was thought to be a friend turns out to be an enemy. Somebody who was thought to be an enemy turns out to be a friend. And I think you'll agree our history is marked by some of both. Also along the way, the mythic hero always gets a few lucky breaks, known as the boon. In the osteopathic profession, we have had our share of lucky breaks. Most importantly, the hero must accept that the treasure is in the cave that one most fears to enter. The fear must be overcome. And just when it appears that all is lost is when triumph is at hand. Is this sounding familiar? If it sounds vaguely familiar, it's because most movie scripts are modeled after the mythic hero's journey. You will never be able to watch a movie the same way again, I promise you, once you know this. Think of it. But our journey is real and is not fictional. Today, we're here to talk about our movie. The interesting thing about our mythic journey, as I said before, is while A.T. Still launched his journey alone, he did not travel alone for long. Others heard his call to adventure and became his acolytes and evangelists. Dr. Still launched the osteopathic profession, and that includes all of us here today on a mythic journey that's continued for over 140 years and that will continue into the future. So why have we survived for over 140 years, despite all the trials and the challenges? Why do we continue to grow and thrive? Why, despite repeated threats and constant change, are we so resilient? It's certainly not for a lack of trials. It is certainly not for a lack of ongoing challenges. Certainly not for a lack of vigorous debate, some of which we experience today within our profession, about who we are and about what strategic directions are best going forward. 5 years ago, when we were looking closely at this single accreditation system, we had dedicated and well-meaning factions who felt that this change was the beginning of the end, that we would lose control of our residencies and of our identity, that we were on a slippery slope to further erosion of what we believed to be our core institutions, college accreditation, licensing, certification. There was another overlapping faction who was certain that the real culprit was the unrestrained growth of colleges of osteopathic medicine, that the potential expansion of our schools had made us vulnerable and was leading to severe shortages in graduate medical education capacity. We had a third group of stakeholders within our profession who believed that we had no option but to play the hand of cards that we had been dealt, that we needed to adapt to the challenges of the future, and that we had to ensure a pathway of complete career options for a future generation of DOs so that we could remain a complete profession. Was there a right side and a wrong side in this debate? Absolutely not. It was then, as it is now, and as it continues, a strategic conversation about the soul of our profession, about whether we are who we say we are, and about what we will be in the future. All we had asked back then was, as we do now, to focus on the bright spots, and despite all the uncertainties, despite all the VUCA, to consider the possibility of a bright future for our profession, and to continue the extraordinary path of adaptation, character, innovation, and vision that has served us so well through our history. As we sit here today and consider the challenges that we face, we need to ask ourselves, through our logical minds, is this really the beginning of the end? Or is this just another phase in our evolution? Are we continuing the disruptive innovation of both ourselves and increasingly of the entire healthcare system? Let's look at our current circumstances and consider whether we have more dark spots or bright spots. Do the challenges outweigh the opportunities? Which is a better strategic path, focusing on those dark spots or exploiting the bright spots? Let's look at some of other dark spots in our past that became bright spots. Many of you remember from our discussions 5 years ago that throughout our history, our profession evolved through different iterations of osteopathic medicine. And it occurred notwithstanding bitter divisions within our profession and defections and blood feuds, whatever you want to call them. And it endured the setbacks of the Flexner Report. Through all that, the osteopathic medicine of the 19th century was transformed into the osteopathic medicine of the early 20th century. The events of World War I and the flu epidemic transformed osteopathic medicine further. Our lack of full practice rights in many states continued to limit many of our practitioners. That was a dark spot. Other dark spots, the setbacks and humiliation we endured in World War II by not being considered true physicians. My own father was told that he could join the Army as long as he was willing to serve as a nurse, and he chose to stay home. That was a bitter pill. But endure and sustain and resilience are the operational words here. We did endure, we did sustain, and we were resilient. And over time, things that looked like terribly dark spots became bright spots. Throughout our history, we've repeatedly taken lemons and turned them into lemonade. We have turned challenges into opportunities, and we have turned those dark spots into bright spots. Also, because of our humanistic, holistic approach to patient care, we've always had a loyal following of grateful patients. And despite the threat of things like the California merger, we did not experience a domino effect among other states. We continued to grow. And we lost our hospitals, and we continued to grow. Along our mythic heroes journey, we got some lucky breaks. The inability to serve in World War II left our physicians home, building large and successful practices. The physician shortage helped our quest to expand full licensing privileges across the country. And the shortage of available physicians in the Vietnam War led to full recognition of our licensing and certification within the armed forces. Victory in this 50-year battle set the stage for further recognition and growth in our profession. In the lingo of the mythic hero, these were boons. These were unintended consequences, and they weren't necessarily bad unintended consequences, and we made the most of them. We've had our share of lucky breaks, but we cannot give all the credit to luck. Let's not forget the quote from Louis Pasteur, "I believe in hard work and luck." Curiously, I have noticed that the harder I work, the luckier I get. All of us, past and present, have worked hard to keep the flame burning, to remember the why of osteopathic medicine. We adapted. We made the most of the lucky breaks. Recognized that while, as Thomas Edison would say, they were often dressed in overalls and looked like work, they were really opportunities to shape our future. Look at the GME issue. There were clearly risks and threats to the single accreditation system. However, now when we look at supply chain issues, and GME slots, we're fighting on the same side as ACGME. We're jointly motivated to create innovative opportunities for GME for both DOs and MDs. If we don't solve this problem, we both lose. We have a powerful ally on our side. I'd say this is a bright spot. And what are our next round of lucky breaks and bright spots? They are unequivocally our emerging generations of students and future DOs. Increasingly, pre-med students have recognized why our approach to care is distinctive. They believe that we are who we say we are. They are humanistic, concerned about health inequities and underserved populations. And they have decided that we are the best pathway to have them help change the world. You're seeing evidence of it in the debates today. In a world of choice, they're saying, I've studied my options. This is the choice I want to make. I want to learn and practice osteopathic medicine. A most wonderful thing. All of you, as evangelists of osteopathic medicine, continue to work diligently on the why of who we are and what we do. You are examples of living each day as an example of what an osteopathic physician should be. For that, you deserve tremendous credit. And most importantly, you are excited to share with others why that is important. How many of you have made an explanation about the why of osteopathic medicine to a pre-med student? Can I see a show of hands, please? A lot of hands out there, aren't there? I'm sure all of you have witnessed that eureka moment when you explain to a young pre-med student about osteopathic medicine and saw the flame light up in their eyes. They become intrigued with our approach to care, our tenets, our philosophy. They often gravitate toward our flame because someone has turned them on to the profession. We all have a favorite anecdote. One of my most memorable experiences about lighting the flame originated in a random conversation in the South Pacific. I was on a surf trip to Fiji. This is back when I could actually surf and was worried about catching waves, and now I'm just worried about getting harpooned. But those were the good old days. Anyway, we were on an island where we'd get ferried out to the reef to surf, and there was a young man named Eric Warren that was the boatman. While Eric was a world-class surfer and lifeguard, his real job, permanent job at that time, was working as a research assistant at UC San Diego. Eric shared with me, in casual conversation, that he was a pre-med student pursuing his long-term dream of becoming a physician. Now, who can guess what my next question was? So, have you looked into osteopathic medicine? And of course, he had not heard much about osteopathic medicine. But he was interested in what I had to say about our philosophy, about our approach to health and disease, and our humanistic approach to the whole person. Very interested. He and I kept in contact via email. He had more questions. He kept me apprised of his progress. He later asked if I would help write a letter of reference for him, which of course I was happy to do. Today, Eric is a fourth-year student at Western University, and he's planning a career in emergency medicine. But the story does not end there. It gets more interesting. Or as they say in the TV commercial, but wait, there's more! Eric asked me if I'd be willing to meet with Riley McMurtry, a fellow research assistant. Riley had been exposed to osteopathic medicine, was asking a lot of questions, was highly interested in our approach to care. He'd told her about me, and she asked if she could meet with me. And I said, sure. So I was soon to learn why she was so interested. Riley drove up to our office from San Diego and told me a most amazing story. Riley grew up in a small California desert community of 900 people called Inyokern. If you've ever been in California and drive up the eastern side of the Sierras at the southern end, there's a little wide spot in the road, and that's Inyokern. Riley's mother was a full-blood Paiute Indian who had a severe learning disability. She could only read and write at a 5th grade level. Riley was the first person in her family ever to go to college. Furthermore, she was one of the few people in her small high school to attend college. Since she and her family had no money, Riley moved to San Diego and put herself through beauty school. She got an esthetician's license. She used her earnings to put herself through college. Because many of her clients had skin problems that were beyond her skills, she soon realized that she wanted to be able to learn more and do more. She became interested in medicine. She volunteered in an emergency department. She witnessed life, death, exaltation, and tragedy. She knew that she wanted to contribute to the efforts of medical professionals to not only save lives, but to improve quality of life. Because of her roots, she was interested in treating rural and underserved populations. Riley was particularly touched by the fact that everyone in the ER was somebody's wife, husband, mother, father, son, or daughter. You know, Riley was already thinking about the whole person. As she continued her volunteer work, Riley learned about osteopathic medicine and realized it was a match for her interest in primary care, rural medicine, and a holistic approach to patients. The story of Riley's journey, of course, to me was compelling, and I was very happy to write her a letter. She was quickly accepted into 4 comms. Because of her interest in rural medicine, Riley chose Edward Via College in Virginia. Today, Riley is also a 4th-year student looking toward a career in internal medicine. But wait, there's even more. What Eric did not tell me until after we were both in medical school was that Riley was his girlfriend. Go figure. He did not want me to think he was biased when referring her up for an interview. If I'd have known, would there have been a different outcome? I don't think so. You can't make these things up, and you all have stories like this. Here are 2 outstanding, value-driven students who knowingly sought out the osteopathic profession. These stories are emblematic of the deep impact of that osteopathic medicine is making on emerging generations of students pursuing medical careers. Increasingly, students have done their research, evaluated their options. They want to become a member of our tribe. They want to join with us on the journey. This trend is the product of your hard work as role models. This trend is the fruit of over 140 years of dedicated practitioners, over 140 years of resilience and adaptation, and 140 years of knowing the why of what we do. Would everybody agree this is a bright spot? I think it is. Along the journey, We've continued to confront difficult decisions. Within each decision, there have been concerns about unintended consequences. But as I said before, let's remember that unintended consequences do not need to be negative. They can be highly positive. We moved into the uncertain world of the VUCA system, of the VUCA world of the single accreditation system. On balance, we were fearing the worst. But what happened was kind of the opposite. Residency Review Committee standards have been revised. Our certification has been recognized for program director requirements. The Osteopathic Recognition Committee has established strong standards to ensure that program graduates are who they say they are. And in the parlance of positive unintended consequences, you heard yesterday that 15% of these programs applying for osteopathic recognition are legacy MD programs. I think they're getting inoculated here. We've decoupled membership and certification in our profession, subject of severe angst. We've dropped the golden handcuffs. We're understandably concerned about the impact on AOA membership, but at the same time, we are seeking to make the AOA, with your help, an organization that DOs envision as their best voice, as their true advocate, and as their professional home. We are increasing our brand recognition in the public domain. We are increasing our visibility in the international community. We're expanding our suite of member value programs to make AOA membership for DOs, no matter where trained or boarded, no matter whether they're employed or practicing independently. We want to make that meaningful and value added. We're also working to streamline our board certification and recertification process to be user-friendly, cost-competitive, and to make our boards a mark of prestige among employers, hospital systems, and health plans. Our dream interview is when one of these entities interview a DO candidate and express concern that they did not take their DO boards. Once that happens, that battle is in good shape, because pull-through demand is a really powerful thing. So we've got to brand those boards and make ourselves the Green Berets, make our boards a mark of prestige and accomplishments and somebody that is who they say they are. The trials ahead are difficult. They represent volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Growth in our profession will continue. The single accreditation system will continue. And our adaptation and evolution as a profession will continue. 20 years from now, we will not be the same profession we are today. That is consistent with our history. And for A.T. Still, the archetypal agent of change, that would be okay. Remember, we have a history of resilience, of embracing change, of making lemons out of lemonade. We're a voice in ACGME. We have MDs seeking to learn more about our approach to care. And we have a future pipeline of osteopathic physicians who have knowingly embraced our principles and our practice of osteopathic medicine. I ask you today to reflect upon these bright spots, to always remember the why of osteopathic medicine, and to continually be evangelists for our profession. I ask each of you to continue the strategic conversations wherever you are, and to recognize that we must play the hands of cards that we're being dealt. Jawaharlal Nehru once said, "The hand of cards you are dealt is fate. How you play them is free will." Each of us has the choice to play the cards and to create more bright spots. Most importantly, I ask you to put aside any dire predictions about our future, to embrace the change we talk about so much, and to continue on the mythic journey begun by A.T. Still. That is what he would expect of us. Remember the words of John F. Kennedy. Change is the law of life, and those who look only to the past or the present are certain to miss the future. Thank you.